Huh?
The playback is the
Okay. I'm on Clubhouse over here. I can see it. So try again. Yeah. I didn't realize I had my mic on the whole time. Sorry. That's Bill Donahue with Discerning Truths. I usually mute myself during the introduction, so sorry if you heard our conversation. All right, so yeah, welcome. This is, like I said, it's Bill Donahue with Discerning Truths, and if you're new here, I always try to give you a little introduction as to who I am, what's going on. I broadcast on a number of platforms, mostly as Donahue Papa. I started on Cloud Hub with that name and DLive, and have subsequently added Twitter and Rumble. And but when I came to Pilled, I ended up with my own name, Bill Donahue. Doxed my own self out there on the internet. And on YouTube, I'm Discerning Truths 534. And I broadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Pacific time. Even though I'm broadcasting from Hawaii, I still kept the Pacific time label because it's easier to follow. And today we're going to start Zechariah. On Tuesdays, I normally join Neo on her stream. Ron and Neo got married during their honeymoon, and I don't expect them back or doing anything till at least after Christmas. And hopefully Neo will re-invite me when she gets back, and we can continue where we do on Tuesdays. And once she's here, I hope you all join in and listen to Neo. I really enjoy her. What's happening, even when I'm not on her program, I like what she does. It's a very cool vibe what Neo gets done. And she streams. I tease her about promptness. So I usually say she streams 10:20, 10:25-ish. It's in that kind of range, Central Time Zone. And like I said, if you find anything that you need to ask me questions for, or if you have more questions that are going to come into a post or two in the chat, just email me and I'll answer the email. Not a problem. Sometimes chat, people have more questions, more comments than chat can handle. And it's just easier on email. And but I do love the people that are in the chat and say hi, even though it is not my practice to look at the chat during the teaching. I usually finish what I'm doing, play a video, and go back and try to read the chat. But I do see everybody that says hi in the chat, and I appreciate it. At the end of the stream, I would create a PDF of anything I put on this slide on the screen other than a picture of my face, and post it on Telegram on the Discerning Truth groups. You can download that and use it for your own study. And I always promote my good friend Michael Beatty in California. Michael is, and I've been friends for decades. He was a singer, songwriter, worship leader when I met him, and been faithful to that. And God has just increased his gifts. Michael is really bringing the scriptures of life, going through Exodus, Monday to Friday, 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. On Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, he prays for the nation. And then on Sunday, his wife Linda joins him, and they're going through Psalms. If you're not listening to Michael, you really don't know what you're missing at this point. So we're starting today in Zechariah, and I always tell people, when I look at a book, I always try to break down the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why questions before I look at a book to try to set a context for the book. And that's where we are today. Before we start Zechariah, is kind of labeling this out. So who was Zechariah? Okay, Zechariah is an Old Testament prophet. He's one of the 12 prophets in the Old Testament who are called minor prophets. And they're no less important, but their books are shorter. So the major prophets that have longer books, like we did Isaiah, and if you were with me when I did Isaiah, you know it took me almost a year to go through Isaiah. Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, those are long prophetic books. The minor prophets, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, or Malachi if you're Italian. Malachi is the last book in the Old Testament. And then Zechariah was a Levite. Okay, he's born in Babylon during a captivity. We learn that in Nehemiah 12:1 and 16. He's the son of Berechiah and the grandson of Iddo the priest. Okay, and you find that out in Zechariah 1:1 and 12:4 and 16 and Ezra 5:1 and 6:14. All those cross-reference. Like I said, he was born in Babylon and joined his grandfather Iddo in the group of exiles that first returned to Jerusalem under the leadership of Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest. And we learn that in Nehemiah 12:4. Because he's occasionally mentioned as the son of his grandfather in Ezra 5:1, 6:4, and Nehemiah 12. Some scholars think his father, Berechiah, died at an early age. Others, although Zechariah was a common name, some scholars think he was also the priest mentioned in Nehemiah 12:12 to 16. So Zechariah is a prophet in Zechariah 1:1. He's definitely a contemporary of Haggai. Okay, another minor prophet listed above. Haggai prophesied a little before Zechariah, but they were probably alive together, right? And, so the contemporary of Zechariah or Haggai, Zerubbabel, and Joshua, the high priest. And we learn that in Ezra 5:1-2, Zechariah 3:1, 4:6, and 6:11. There's some debate whether he also lived at the same time as Malachi. And unlike Haggai, Zechariah was probably a young man when he prophesied. And we get that from Zechariah 2:4. So Haggai is a little older and prophesies before Zechariah. and then Zechariah is a younger man, and he prophesies after. And a lot of times people will study Zechariah, Haggai, and Malachi together because there's a lot of overlapping in the three prophets in the general period. And it's a period where the second temple is built under Zerubbabel. And if you remember, the Babylonians destroyed the first temple. Jeremiah had hid the Ark of the Covenant and the other temple instruments in the cave that Moses was in. The Ark of the Covenant to date has not been found. Sorry, you Ron Wyatt fans, it's not there. It's not there. But the Ark of the Covenant was never returned to the Second Temple. So for the entire Second Temple period, even with the plain temple of Zerubbabel built, or the large expansion done under Herod during the time before the time of Jesus, that the temple Jesus walked in, there was no Ark of the Covenant behind the curtain. Okay, the temple instruments have never been returned. God was not in that temple, like he was in Solomon's temple. No. Zechariah prophesied to the people of Judah after they returned from their 70 years in exile in Babylon. You learn that in Zechariah 1:1, Nehemiah 12:1, and 12:4 to 16. And Zechariah's grandfather returned from Babylon, his young grandson in tow, with the first group of Israelites allowed back in about 538 BC. And I always tell you, when you look at ancient dates, just think of them as approximate dates. You know, when people start telling you this happened on May 4th, 538 BC, they don't understand the difficulties reconciling calendars, okay? There's a lot of problems. But we're in and about 538 BC. So, 538 years or so before Jesus was born, right? And because of his family lineage, Zechariah was a priest in addition to a prophet. He therefore would have had an intimate familiarity with the worship practices of the Jews, even if he had never served in a completed temple. They would have been trained in temple worship from the time they were a young man. Okay? And as a young man at the time of his prophecies, like I said in Zechariah 2:4, his life more than likely extended into the reign of Xerxes. This is a Persian king, 485 to 465 BC. He's the king best known in the Bible for making Esther the queen of Persia. So this is how these things are going to tie together. Okay? And Zechariah's name means Yahweh remembers. And even his name is prophetic here. Okay? It gives us some insight into the nature of the book. Yahweh, or Jehovah, if you want to pronounce it that way. And I've seen good arguments that Jehovah is actually a correct pronunciation of the word, or Yahovah, okay? Scholars, they came up with Yahweh from the four consonants. And the reason it's a W instead of a V is it's a German scholar that did it, and they pronounced their W like a V, okay? And Yahweh remembers his people and brings them back into the land of Judah. Zechariah's book brims over with the hope that God would remember his promises to his people, even after they had spent time outside the land. And it really is an optimistic book in the way it comes forward. But it's basically saying, yeah, God sent you into Babylon, punished Judah, put you into a thing. But he remembers you're his people. He chose you, right? Now, there's always controversy. You get two scholars together, you might get three opinions, okay? And then the controversy over the authorship and the unity of the book is many critical scholars have decided that chapters 9 through 14 were not authored by Zechariah, and the reasons they have been based on internal evidence. Unlike chapters 1 to 8, where Zechariah's name is mentioned 3 times, it's not mentioned in the last 6 chapters. The last 6 chapters do not mention dates. The last 6 chapters do not make clear references to any known historical events, like the completion of the temple. And the book of Zechariah lacks unity in its content, style, and vocabulary. Okay? Well, let me just tell you, I think those arguments are bogus. They're just there. Critical scholars, some critical scholars, are looking at deconstructing the Bible to the point where you can't believe anything. So just because a prophet doesn't mention his own name in some chapters doesn't mean he didn't write those chapters. This is crazy. Now, John Chisholm writes, arguments of this type are often subjective. Others have presented this list of stylistic and thematic similarities between two sections. Okay? So while the critical scholars say it lacks any unity in style, you have conservative scholars showing stylistic patterns and similarities. Okay? It seems that these differences may be best explained in the view of an apocalyptic genre of the material rather than through difference in authorship. Grissom writes, any actual differences may be due to change in subject matter in literary genre. Okay? And this is, I copied this off of the Bible.org because I thought it's perfect. But understand this. Even the book of Daniel, that contains a lot of apocalyptic imagery and stuff, is not completely apocalyptic literature. Parts of the book are historical narrative. The the book of Revelation is apocalyptic literature in its majority, but it's also a prophetic book. It's also, part of it is narrative. At least the first couple chapters of it are narrative, right? So when you change style in your writing, the book and the tone of the book are going to change, right? And we get to the what question. And so as the prophet Haggai encouraged the return of the Jewish exiles to rebuild the temple, Zechariah encouraged them to repent from not having finished the temple, repent of that, and renew their covenant with God. Such spiritual renewal would be necessary for the people to be ready to worship God once the temple was rebuilt. So he's working on fixing their inside so to make them ready to worship God. He accused them of doing the very things that their ancestors had done before the exile, in ignoring God and his statutes and stuff, ignoring their prophets. He's concerned about social justice for widows, orphans, and foreigners. Okay, one of the crimes that they went into the Babylonian captivity for, what God judged them for, and we learn this in Isaiah, was the way Israel treated widows, orphans, and foreigners. They were corrupt in their doing business. The rich were getting richer and the poor were being mistreated. And God says, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm going to take this out on you. But as the people have endured opposition from non-Jewish inhabitants of Judea, Zechariah reassured them that God's abiding comfort and care. And you're going to see the carrot and the stick all through Isaiah. God will love you. God will protect you. God will do all this stuff. If you keep his commandments and do what he asks you to do, follow the words of his prophets. If you don't, remember what he did before. He put your people into bondage in Egypt. He put your people into bondage in Babylon. This happened because of the people were not following God. Zechariah's book is full of messianic hope, which was rekindled during Zechariah's ministry. There's a kind of the way Christians today look at the end times, like that Jesus is coming soon. There's been periods of messianic hype where they really were expecting the Messiah and to come back and become a king over Israel and establish a never-ending kingdom greater than even the Solomon's kingdom. They were doing it. They're coming out of Babylon. They're coming out of captivity. They're being put back in the land. It's understandable that they had this hope the Messiah is going to show up. And now, nearly 20 years after returning from the Babylonian exile, God's people were becoming discouraged. The foundation of the temple had been laid shortly after the initial return, but powerful opposition had prevented any further progress on rebuilding the temple. And there was little evidence of the kind of spiritual renewal that was earlier prophets had anticipated. Okay? So that spiritual renewal hadn't happened yet, and he's encouraging them to do it. Jewish sovereignty had not been restored. They were still under the control of the Persian king. A moral reformation of the people had not occurred yet. Jerusalem was still only partially rebuilt, and no significance among the surrounding nations. It's not a nation of power. It's a little outpost. They had interpreted the earlier prophets to mean that they were going to immediately be back into this land of milk and honey, and things were going to be wonderful. And so for the people who were newly returned from exile, Zechariah provided specific prophecies about both their immediate and distant future, which was a great encouragement to the people. Okay? Their nation would still be judged for sin. You see that in Zechariah 5. But they would also be cleansed and restored in Zechariah 3, 1-10. And God would rebuild his people, Zechariah 1, 7-17. And Zechariah concludes his book by looking into the distant future, first at the rejection of Messiah by Israel in Zechariah 9, 1-11-17, and then at the eventual reign when Israel will finally be delivered, Zechariah 12, 1-14-21. And then the book of Zechariah contains the clearest and largest numbers of messianic passages among the minor prophets. In that respect, it's possible to think of this book of Zechariah as kind of a miniature Isaiah. Okay? Zechariah pictures Christ in both his first coming in Zechariah 9:9 and his second coming in Zechariah 9:10 to 10:12. Jesus will come, according to Zechariah, as Savior, as Judge, and ultimately as righteous King ruling his people from Jerusalem. You see that in Zechariah 14:8-9. You're going to see the connections to Revelation when we're in there as we go through this book. In the what question, I broke down kind of an outline for you. There's a need for turning to the Lord in repentance, okay, and serving him. The Lord's concern and care for his people and their difficulty. Jerusalem's future expansion and blessing. What they don't understand is this expansion is going to lead into the Gentile nations, okay? And we're going to see this right away. The complete and permanent removal of the people's sin that happened with Jesus. The removal of the false prophecy and idolatry from the land. That ultimately not going to happen until the second coming. The importance of the temple as the source of God's blessing. Okay? And the Lord's wrath upon nations that plundered Judah and Jerusalem. The divine warriors return to terrorize Israel's foe. The divine warrior is a role of Jesus in the Old Testament, or the second person of the Trinity, how you want to do this. It is the captain of the Lord's host. He's the divine warrior. He's coming back. You're pouring out of God's Spirit, resulting in repentance and opening the fountains for cleansing of sin. And judgment of the wicked shepherds, okay, of God's people, and their replacement by a good shepherd. Wicked shepherds are like evil pastors, evil people that have been in it, leaders for Judah and Israel. Because they live in a theocracy, the evil shepherds are also the leaders of the civil government. But you're going to see it's like the scribes and Pharisees in the New Testament. They are evil. And the striking of the good shepherd and the scattering of the flock. Well, we now know, looking back, that the good shepherd was struck and beaten and put on a cross, right? The flock was scattered around the world. You had the dispersion of the thing. And the Lord's final triumph over the nations in chapter 14. And that's kind of the way Zechariah lays out his book and what the subject matter is going to cover. Now, the when question, I've explained before that nailing down exact dates in history is a lot of assumptions. And given that disclaimer, it's generally agreed that the rebuilding of the temple, known as the Second Temple, began in or about 521 BC and was completed in and about 515 BC. Okay? It's clear from the book of Zechariah that a prophet lived during and after this construction project. although the dating for his book is often listed as 518 to 516 BC. I think that traditional date range is too narrow, because Zechariah is both concerned with the temple being rebuilt and with how they acted after rebuilding is complete. If completion doesn't happen until 515, then his prophecies extend beyond 515. They don't stop in 516 BC. And I consider doing the back book of Haggai first, because Haggai prophesies before Zechariah, right? And with the minor overlap, possibly an overlap as short as a few months, right? Where their role as a prophet might have only overlapped a few months or maybe a year. I decided against it because Zechariah is sometimes called a mini Isaiah, and I just felt like there's more substance in Zechariah than Haggai, and we get a lot from this book because of the background I did in Isaiah. Okay. Now you got 3 phases of the return. The first wave of Hebrews returning to Jerusalem was led by Zerubbabel. The first wave had fewer than 50,000 people returning and began work on the temple, managed to lay the temple's foundations before quitting. Years later, after that project was restarted and the temple was completed, we see that in Ezra 1-6. And the reason they held off the temple is they were concerned about the wall. Okay, and the wall is going to be a subject of this book. The second wave of Hebrews returning to Jerusalem was led by Ezra. Ezra is going to retranslate the Old Testament. These people, the language of the law in that was no longer valid, and for most people coming out of Babylonian captivity. So Ezra and the priests retranslate the Old Testament into what is the text that we find the Old Testament written in now, or at that time, when you're looking at ancient manuscripts. So it was a language that they understood, in a form of Hebrew that was understood. And then after they recopied the law and all that stuff, there's a big celebration where the priests return to the temple and they teach the people the law. They used to sit there and read the whole law out. You got to understand, these people have been in captivity. Most of them have not heard the law and prophets. There hasn't been synagogue worship the whole time they were in Babylon. They were slaves. And the third wave of Hebrews, not hurting to Jerusalem. How about coming? I don't know how coming got changed into hurting, right? Coming to Jerusalem was led by Nehemiah. This group rebuilt Jerusalem's walls and reestablished the government, with Nehemiah serving as a governor for 12 years. So he's basically a proxy governor for the Persian king. They're allowed some level of sovereignty underneath Nehemiah. Now, Zechariah's grandfather, Iddo, was a priest who returned to Jerusalem with Zerubbabel in the first wave, right? Zerubbabel is the first governor of Jerusalem, and when they returned from the Babylonian captivity. Now, Zechariah was the son of Berechiah, who was the son of Iddo. Zechariah prophesied from the 2nd to 4th year of the reign of Darius the Mede. So you're again talking about 520 to 518 BC. Some people say 518 to 516. Okay, and but like I said, I think there's an issue. Either he is prophetically talking about what's going to happen after, how they're going to act in the at post rebuilding, or this time frame's too narrow based on taking a passage in a much too literal sense, and about the 2nd and 4th year, maybe limited to just those prophecies, not the whole book. Now the where. Zechariah is prophesying from Jerusalem in the former nation of Judah. The nation is still under Persian rule. The traditional date for the fall of Babylon is 539 BC, with my caveat about the difficulties nailing down ancient dates. We're in the right ballpark, right? Persian king Cyrus defeated Babylon. Cyrus is mentioned some 23 times in the literature of the Old Testament. Isaiah refers to Cyrus as Jehovah's shepherd and the Lord's anointed, who was providentially appointed to facilitate the divine plan. God would lead the monarch and subdue the nations and open doors. It's an allusion to Jews released from Babylonian captivity. He would make rough places smooth, i.e., he would accommodate the Hebrews and return them to the Palestinian. Oh my God. Their Palestinian homeland. He would ultimately be responsible for rebuilding Jerusalem and the reconstruction of the temple. So Cyrus is a pagan king. God called him by name. God used him as his anointed to do this. Okay? This happens all the time where God uses people that aren't even believers, right? Now, God predicted by name the liberation of the Jews by Cyrus in Isaiah 44:28. And that verse says, "Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he shall fulfill my purpose? Saying of Jerusalem, she shall be built, and of the temple your foundation shall be laid." The prophecy is made before the heathen monarch is even born. The fulfillment of these plain and specific predictions are written down for us in 2 Chronicles 36 and Ezra 1, in Ezra 4. You see this happening. And even Zechariah talks about the foundation's been laid at this point. Okay? The why question. This is always the most important question. In I tell people in questions in life, start with the why question. When I do this, look at the Bible, I follow the traditional format: who, what, when, where, and why, right? But when you're looking at problems in life or questions in life, if you start with the why question, why am I doing this? Why am I making this choice? What am I doing? A lot of times the rest of those questions will sort themselves out. Okay? So when I got to the when question, I had to touch on part of the why. When the Hebrews came back to Jerusalem, in several ways, there's several efforts to rebuild a much plainer version of the temple by Zerubbabel than Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple was very opulent, everything. And when you look at drawings of Zerubbabel's temple, it's a very plain building. Herod will remodel Zerubbabel's temple and make it opulent again under Herod. But during Zerubbabel's time, it's a very plain. The inside of the temple is what matters, not how it looks on the outside. And Zerubbabel chose a plainer, easier to build thing. Kind of like the tent that they used in the desert. But mixed in with these encouragements to build a temple and restore temple worship of God are many prophecies about the Messiah as coming king and judge of the nations. The Hebrews, the with an E, sorry, I did proofread these, but if you're new here, I have the inability to proofread my stuff in advance. My brain autocorrects and it makes it impossible. Unless I'm live on air, apparently I have that ability. So, the Hebrews had just gone through 70 years of bondage and slavery in Babylon. And I often refer to the tribes of Israel with the inaccurate label Jews, okay? But I'm calling them Hebrews here intentionally. We saw the prophecy of the destruction of the northern kingdom, which was Israel, or who Isaiah calls Ephraim, okay? Because they had sided with the Assyrian king against the nation of Judah, okay? Now, God eliminated both Israel and Assyria within 65 years. And that prophecy is in Isaiah 7, 4-8. Assyria disappeared as a nation, and Israel disappeared as, he says they're not going to be identified as a people. Okay? That left the southern kingdom, Judah, from where we get the name Jews, right? Was primarily the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. But there were likely exiles from the northern kingdom living in Judah when Babylon captured it. Babylon also conquered what was remaining of the northern kingdom and took those people into captivity, right? So this is certainly going to result from people from all 10 tribes being in captivity in Babylon. And you're going, wait a second, how do you have 10 tribes up north and 3 tribes down below, and you have only 12 tribes? Because when they count 10 tribes in the north, instead of counting the tribe of Joseph, they count his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So that makes 10 up there. There's actually 9 tribes if you count it as the tribe of Joseph. But the northern kingdom is those 10 tribes. The southern kingdom is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And so the 12 tribes of that, depends on how you count them, there's actually 13. It's an interesting study in the Old Testament is when they count the 12 tribes, if Ephraim and Manasseh are in the list, another tribe is always missing. And the missing tribe in that count is a hint to something going on with that tribe. Okay? And but that's another rabbit trail for another day. Maybe a Friday someday I'll deal with that, right? So they leave Babylon as one people that I'm calling Hebrews. But most people are going to call them Jews. That's how we know this kingdom as, right? And I often use the nomenclature myself. It's just easy, right? Although technically a Jew is a Hebrew defending specifically from the tribe of Judah, but it's often applied to the 3 tribes in the southern kingdom. So it's just a shorthand way to talk about a Hebrew, right? Post-Babylonian Hebrew. And after the temple was rebuilt, Ezra and the priest and 13 other translators, and they're all listed, okay, in Nehemiah 8:4, they make a new copy of the Old Testament book. The earlier copies were in a language called Paleo-Hebrew. It's an obsolete version of Hebrew, so the translators will make a new copy of the law that the returning exiles can understand. They're very likely were working on this translation while the temple was being rebuilt for all those years, right? When the construction is completed in Nehemiah 8:1-4, they do it. They read the law to the people. You will have critics claim that Ezra invented and wrote all the Torah, that the Torah didn't exist prior to this writing. This is nonsense, okay? Ezra made a copy, right? Made a new translation for the people. And when you think about the old way the books are written, if you have a manuscript written on papyrus, you have to recopy it about every 20 years because the papyrus is going to degrade. If you have it written on animal skin, they used to use antelope skin because it's good hide, called vellum. You have to recopy it about every 100 years because the animal skin will degrade. So there was constantly making new copies of the Old Testament. The same thing happens in the New Testament, and that's why you had so many churches making new copies of the things. Why we have so many manuscripts of the New Testament, because they're being recopied on a regular basis. Okay, that doesn't mean you're inventing new stuff. Okay. Now, Haggai and Zechariah play important roles in getting the Hebrews ready for a restored relationship of temple worship to Yahweh, and to an even greater extent, Zechariah gives the people hope for, he's trying to encourage them not to give up, to keep moving on with their progress. And that's what this book is about. That's why it's written, to encourage people during a time where they're struggling, when things haven't worked out. The plan God gave them, the prophecies God gave them, are not working out the way they understood them to be at the time. And Zechariah is here encouraging them. Keep going, hang true, stay faithful to God. He will fulfill these prophecies. He's going to bring them back. The Babylonian captivity is in recent memory. It just ended, right? So he's going to refer them back to that. There will be allusions to the captivity in Egypt as well. But he's going to show them God is powerful. He can do what he says. Just believe him. You want to stay what can be called believing loyalty to God. Don't be following these other gods. Do not abandon God's statutes and his covenants. Do not abandon temple worship, right? Stay faithful to God, and he will fulfill all these promises in his time and according to his purposes. And I think that's relevant for us today, because there's a lot of things happening in the world that don't seem to be going according to the plan we had, right? The way we think it ought to turn out. So with that, I'm going to put on a song. I'm going to try to read the chat. I see Sunitha's very busy over on Foxhole. Hopefully I can read through all that, his comments again, see if there's anything I can respond to. And but if anybody else has a question or comment, now's the time for you to put it in there. And during the song, I will try to read them, and I will answer what I can online. Thanks.
When Israel came out of Egypt, Jacob from a people of foreign tongue, Judah became God's sanctuary, Israel his dominion. Sing praise, sing all the earth, sing praise to his name. Sing praise, sing all the earth, sing praise to his name. The sea looked and fled, the Jordan turned back, the mountains skipped like rams, the little hills like lambs. Sing praise, sing all the earth, sing praise to his name.
Okay, so we're back. So, yeah, I think Sneezer, a good comment. Apocalypse or apocalyptic, it means to reveal. But I don't think it necessarily means it has to be historical. You can reveal something future. But the vast majority of apocalypses that we have of that genre of literature are about historical things that were happening right then. It's a style of literature talking about persecution. Often because there's Jewish style of literature, it was persecution of Jews by a current occupying force. During the New Testament period, that was Rome. So a lot of the first century apocalypses that you have during that period are about Rome, and that's what they are. And it's a revelation of that, and that's exactly correct. So this is a revelation of God's plan for these people that's immediately in their context. But the way prophecy is fulfilled is already but not yet. There's an immediate, fulfillment of that prophecy that we're going to see in Zechariah, and a not yet. The Messiah doesn't come yet, even though he predicts it. The Messiah is not coming as conquering king yet. But there is a promise here about God doing it right then. And that's where this is going. So I didn't see any other questions to address. I do want to say, Mr. Snarf, thank you. I was just looking at pictures of your baptism today, and that was what a great day we had. And singing pretty, I'm glad you're out there, and everybody else that's joined us. I'm not trying to exclude anybody from that. And sort of Michael, thank you very much for the promotion of my show that you've been doing. It's I'm almost blushing on the other end the way you talk about what I do. And thank you very much. And God willing, I will be back here on Wednesday, and we'll do the first chapter of Zechariah. And with that, I'm going to get out of here for today. May God bless you all.